Welcome, everybody. Hello. Thanks so much for being here at Spirit Matters, your daily spiritual check-in with us at the Bhakti Center. My name is Doc Runga, and I'm here with Achyuta Gopi. Thank you so much for being here. Lovely people. How are we doing today?
Still sheltered.
Still sheltered. Hasn't gone away. It's lingering. It lingers. It's long shelter. It's long shelter. Um, Wonderful, wonderful. I'm doing all right myself. And anything we should say, announcements, things to do before we launch in? Anything on your mind?
I think we're good.
She's
Let's do
good.
it.
We're
Let's
good,
start.
everybody. Let's do it. Do you want me to recap and start us off, or do you want to recap and start us off?
No, go ahead. You can recap.
I'll recap. We are reading from Bhagavad Gita. If you're new with us or joining us recently, you've learned and realized that we turn to Bhagavad Gita, it's an ancient song of wisdom. Bhagavad Gita means the song of the divine. And we read every day to give us a little bit of a spiritual insight, something to take with us in our life, because we forget oftentimes. We get reminders all the time. We just aren't in, they're not intentional. We're reminded of what to buy. We're reminded what to look like. We're reminded how to talk. We're reminded what our lives should look like, quote unquote, according to whatever we see outside of ourselves. And that's the world reminding us in a certain direction. And we want different kinds of reminders. We want different types of reminders to remind us to connect to self, to connect to God, to connect more deeply with others, to create space. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us those little reminders, and we read a verse or a selection of verses, and we unpack it a little bit, share its context in our lives, and then take a little something away. And we have been on the third chapter of Gita. There are 18 chapters in this book, and we are getting towards the end of the third chapter. And yesterday and the day before, we read this group of verses about the nature of lust, not defined as sexual avarice, but more broadly defined as this hardwired um, desire for something that uh, is almost that these obsessions that take over our lives and dictate our actions, that put us in a place of autopilot rather than intentional decision making. We sometimes lose our freedom when we become imprisoned by these obsessions in life, that when we stop and think about it, like, why do I even want this? Why am I so caught up in trying to get this or make this happen or have things go a certain way? And so Krishna was talking about how the living entity gets covered to various degrees, by this intense obsession of material desire, which it refers to as lust, and that we can separate it from ourselves. We don't have to identify with it. It's not that I'm a bad person. We are all inherently pure spirit souls, but just like we get a cold, or we get COVID, or we get cancer, or we get Parkinson's, we get these diseases. We also have these subtle diseases of the mind and the intellect and the false ego. And we should just be able to identify them and separate ourselves from them and learn how to deal with them. Um, and I don't know what verse we got to. Um,
We're currently, we are thinking now about looking at the last two chapters. So we got all the way through 41. We have like
Last two verses.
last two verses of this chapter.
Got it. Okay. So 42. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence O mighty armed Arjuna. One should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. That's the word you used yesterday and the day before, insatiable. Did you know that it was there?
Yes.
Oh, she's like, yes, I've read this before,
Yes.
Dial. Um,
That's why I used it. That's why I said I can't take credit for that because that was God.
I'm going to read that verse again. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. That again, that's what we were saying. This creating of separation between myself and the disease. I have anger, I have envy, I have greed, I have pride and misconception of myself. It's something that I'm dealing with. I'm looking for the cure. O mighty armed Arjuna, knowing that you're not only separate, but that you are above all of that. You are better than all of that. You are not defined by all of that. One should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. Read consistent, in the Yoga Sutras, it mentions that one of the paths of spiritual development is um, continual practice. And it's defined and elaborated on as consistent application over a long period of time, you know? And so when I read deliberate spiritual intentions, it means learning to be more intentional about our choices, learning to be more intentional about why we enter into certain situations or what we may need to move. I think I read today or yesterday, somebody posted that said that sometimes growth looks like learning to say goodbye. you know Sometimes growth looks like learning to say goodbye, meaning that, okay, something needs to I need to be willing to let something walk out of my life, or I need to walk out of the room of something else sometimes. So deliberate spiritual intelligence, thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. And again, lust defined in this broader field of this insatiable desire for something that doesn't ultimately serve my real self. Okay, that's the recap. That's our verses today. And this is when I turn it over to Chita Gopi to say something meaningful and substantial. On to you, Chita. Over to you, Chita.
Like that would be something I was like, I got nothing. No.
I got nothing. Back to you, Dial.
um, I was kind of reflecting on the many ways that this material world has been referred to. And one of them by a spiritual leader that we all love and trust, um, is referred to it as like a hospital. And I've always thought that that was a really apt description because sometimes we can go through this life really identifying with the issues that we have or the hiccups or whatever instead of seeing ourselves as a whole. We start to identify with merely the disease, which, if we think about it, every time we got like an earache, we stopped identifying as the person that we were. Like, we're not going to pick up the mail anymore. We're not going to even answer to that name because we are the earache and nothing but the earache. um and that sounds a little bit like, it's like, wow, it's completely trivial. Why would you do that? And
We
for
do it all the time.
exactly for more evolved living entities, those who have been in touch with the supreme person, those who really are remembering what the actual nature of our existence is, it seems a little trivial. It's like, you're right. Why would you do that? You are not just this earache or a sinus infection or whatever it is. And there are so many people now trying to change language around certain things, right? About how we talk about certain things. About, you are not like it's like you could be a person that has ADHD, but you are not just the ADHD. And so everyone is kind of getting this inkling that, wait a minute, I need to actually find out who I am beyond all of the ways that this life is working or not working, beyond all the ways that this body is working or not working. Who am I? And so I think it's very interesting that we subtly see lots of people asking this question in many different ways. Everybody is trying to figure out, like, well, who exactly am I if this doesn't define my life? Who am I if my job doesn't define my life? Who am I if my house, my car, my wealth doesn't define me? That if I and everybody knows, you know, you can't take it with you. But then who am I if I'm not my reputation? And Arjuna was asking this question at the very beginning. Who am I if I'm not this incredible archer? Who am I if I'm not an administrator, a prince? Who am I? And what will people think about me? Because it seems as though all of society rests on us accepting this identity. You are a businessman so and so, council person so and so, you're a firefighter, you could be a mail person, whatever it is. But it's like society hinges on you firmly accepting this role as your identity, or at least one of them, and molding your life as such. So there are people who find themselves as judges or as administrators, and they feel as though even in their normal life away from the job, it is incumbent upon them, they must act a certain way. They have to hold their lives to a certain standard, because what will people think?
Mm.
And we hear that verse, you know, what great men do, common men will follow, and it will come up. But this is what we've been doing our entire lives. But now people are starting to say, this is not bringing me the joy, relief, whatever it is that I thought it was going to bring. The recognition, the money, the fame, the wealth, the cars, the houses, the spouses, the everything is not only is it not bringing me what I'm looking for, but it's still not answering the question of, but who am I without all these things? And do I matter if I don't have all of them?
Mm.
And so I'm grateful for Bhagavad Gita, because it would be tough trying to navigate without it. And I've always said that about Krishna consciousness. I don't know if I would be able to navigate life without Krishna consciousness, without that anchor of God consciousness to say, it's not just what your mind is telling you, not even just what your intelligence is telling you. You have a soul that functions apart and above all of that.
Mm. I thank you. I appreciate that appreciation of what we have and what these some of these guiding principles. And I was there's a couple of things. I was, we live in such a profile culture, looking up someone's profile. Like you go to Wikipedia and you immediately go to like the personal life section. And it's like, okay, I'm going to know everything about so and so in 3 paragraphs or less, and it's like, I've got you now. You want to just like get a sense, like if there's a movie that you like and there's an actor or an actress, is like, I want to know if I like this actor or not. So let me go to the Wikipedia file and just check their profile and personal life. And all of a sudden it's like you figure out like if they're a good person or not, right? Um, and we live in such a profile of just wanting to just like put somebody into a profile, an ethnic profile, a socioeconomic status profile, an occupational profile, a relationship profile. Like, what's your status? And I think that it feeds this sense of it again. We're talking about reminders in the beginning of our conversation. It creates a reminder that you are these things, which is not true. It's a false reminder. And I think, I was just somehow sometime this morning or in the evening or whenever, when I was sleeping, I was having a dream, and somehow it was related to that question. Somehow I was asking this question in the dream of, if a tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? And in the dream, I was thinking like, well, does it count if somebody puts a recorder there and then leaves and there's nobody there and then there's a recorder? Can you check the recorder. Does that count if it made a sound? Like somehow I was
I
trying.
always thought that philosophical question was extremely self-centered. It's like, if I am not around to see what happens, then your constitutional position as whatever you are ceases to exist.
Mm,
Like that to me always felt like, yeah, well, if I'm not around to see, like, who cares? And I was just
yeah.
like, but the tree has a constitutional position, the earth has a constitutional position. All of these things have constitutional positions. It's going to make a sound because that is the constitutional position of that tree and the earth and the way it falls. It is so self centered to say, but if no one's around to hear it, how do you know? It's like, because that's the constitutional position of things. But
Yeah.
that's also us in the material world. We are going to have a constitutional position. Whether we think we are anti establishment, we are going to serve
Mm,
someone, something, somewhere. We are always going to have to be under the laws of something, somewhere, no matter whether we think, oh, but I don't have to follow the laws of this land. There are some laws, either nature's laws or you're not jumping out the window testing gravity. You are following some laws.
I
And
test
then there are
gravity.
people who are like, they're like, well, I don't have faith. I don't live by faith. Yeah, you do every day. Otherwise, you wouldn't cross the street having faith that the other people are going to stop at a stoplight. You wouldn't get on a bus having faith that some bus driver that you don't know has the wherewithal to drive this bus. We are exercising our faith every day. And so, all those philosophical questions, I'm always like, why are we asking this question? Like, completely picking apart the constitutional nature of something else. Where it's like, if I don't agree to it, then the constitutional position of that person over there doesn't exist. And that's what
Mm,
we do with each other. Like,
yeah.
looking to put each other in these boxes. It's like, if you are not going to act in a way that makes me feel validated and seen and not triggered and held and coddled and swaddled and comforted at every moment, then I get to take away all the good things from you.
Mm,
And I am kind of like, but
yeah.
that doesn't stop that other person from existing. All it does is make us bury our heads in the sand.
Mm. I'm really glad I didn't bring up that question because I thought it was a good question.
No, it's okay. I would have told you just the same. I would have been like, Dial, let me give you some hard truths
I
today.
found this really great question in this book of mysteries of the universe. There's a story of the Buddha, and he asks his student, if the tree falls in the middle of the forest and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? And I was like, whoa, that's like it, man. That's like where it's all at. And Chuda's like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Get the heck out of here. No, but I actually appreciate it because that's you elaborated and illuminate the point. The reason that I brought that question up, because I was thinking of also as you were saying, it's like, if I do something quote unquote meaningful and nobody's there to validate it, is it still meaningful? The answer is of course. The answer is absolutely of course. And I think you're asking the question, like, if I don't know who I am, like I've been referencing this podcast I listened to with Kevin Hart and Jay Shetty. And I don't know if I've referenced this part before, but if I did, I'll just say it again, is that one of the most powerful parts is that the biggest drug, did I say this earlier this week already? The biggest drug is not cocaine, it's not heroin, it's not LSD, it's not whatever. He said it's fame. It's fame. It's this feeling of being invincible. And he said, nobody prepares you for it. And he said, if you don't know, if you're not prepared to handle life when it goes away, if you don't know who you are when that's taken away from you, you're going to have a really, really hard time. And so this idea of like being able to know who I am, separate from all of the amazing accolades and incredible things that happened to me, and separate also from the amazing, the flip side of the coin, all of the appreciation and applauses and validations I get from the world, and all of the rejections and criticisms and negative comments I get from the world. Now granted, there's we say this often, don't seek external validation, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that the search for validation is not wrong, and we all need even a certain level of material validation. Like, I love it when people tell me that they like this podcast or that they appreciate, get something about it. It encourages me. It makes me feel like what I'm doing has meaning. I think that if none of us ever got anybody ever telling us that anything we ever did was good, we would live a very tough existence. And so I don't think that the need to be told that what we're doing has meaning, or that we're doing a good job, or that people appreciate us is bad. But when we don't know who we are outside of that, we put ourselves in a very precarious situation. And I think that we live in a world of, sometimes it's like you post something on social media, it's like, I don't even know if I like this until I figure out, how many likes it gets in return. Like, I'll post something that I think is great, and then there's no likes on it. I'm thinking, oh, that must have been stupid. Or I post something that I didn't think was very good, and a bunch of people like it. And it's like, oh, that must have been really, really great. And it's like, no, it's the same either way. Like you said, there's a constitutional position. It makes the same sound. It's just perceived different at different times with different people. And so I'm just I appreciate, and this whole verse of Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is going through the hierarchy, and he's saying that the senses are appeared to dull matter. There's dull matter. There's lifeless matter in the world that exists. And your senses and your mind and your intellect are all gross and subtle faculties that exist above that. But you, the spirit soul, are higher than even all of that. And you should know that. And you should be able to understand that you are above and separate from all of that, so that we don't fall into the trap of this profile culture of thinking that I am what happens to me. I am the decisions I made in life. I am the way people perceive me. I am my diseases. Because it's a roller coaster otherwise.
I think there's so much that is fascinating and interesting in what you've said. Um, even going back to like, there's so many interesting things, and we can think about it like, okay, if all of these things weren't important, then why would the Vedas talk about them? Because the
Mm,
Vedas have so many sections dedicated to all of these things, right? Economic advancement, religiosity, controlling your desires, which desires are what, how to fulfill those desires, how to get, like all of these things. And why would the Vedas talk about them?
mm,
And then Krishna says, the minute you can entangle yourself from the flowery words of the Vedas,
mm,
which are ultimately a cause of confusion, is the point when you can really start to examine who you are outside of all of that. And I've always thought that it was so amazing that there are all of these Vedas, and we are desperately trying to put some stock in something. Right? So that there has the authoritative say. Well, this has the authoritative say. Well, that one has the authority. Well, but whose authority? At a certain
mm,
point, this is why Krishna is saying, at a certain, you're just gonna have to abandon all varieties of everything and just surrender unto me.
mm,
Even that goes with sometimes the traditions that we think of. We have to look at whether it's serving our highest self. And
mm,
so it's almost like the rules are there to get you into a health regimen where you no longer need those rules after a certain point.
mm,
When we think about, if we keep on with this analogy of having a disease and being in a hospital, you take a course of antibiotics. But sometimes, unless you're dealing with something really, really, really heavy, you stay on those antibiotics only for some time. The rules are there to get you to a point where you can be spiritually healthy enough, where you don't have to let them cloud you, confuse you, or hold you back anymore. We are meant to go beyond all of the rules and regulations, but in a spiritually healthy way, still developing this spiritual connection with our supreme person. And so I think that this idea of the hospital has always resonated with me, because then can I really look at somebody else and say, well, I mean, my illness is better than their illness. So, but we're all in a
Mm.
hospital. And if I think my illness is better than somebody else's illness, then I might forget to take my medication. And if I do that, then I won't be out of this hospital faster than anybody else. What might have been a more simple illness turns into something very complex because of the ego,
Mm.
because of this thinking that, mine is better than yours, and I and mine, and this is mine, and that's yours, and I'm me, and it's me versus them. And we never get out of that thinking. That thinking just further wraps us up in this whole place.
Mm.
But I think that Krishna has always hit the nail on the head, being omnipotent and omniscient and all that. He's pretty good at that. And so I'm not surprised that Kevin Hart is saying that fame is an incredible drug, because Krishna is saying it in the first, second chapters. For one who has been honored,
Mm.
for one who has been famous, infamy is worse than death. He's looking at his friend going, you think you're gonna run away to the forest and be okay with everybody? Like, if you already think that they're tarnishing your image, you think it's gonna be better after all of this? And yet, Krishna presents the same gifts, blessings, and even more to a warrior named Karna, who happened to be the best friend of Duryodhan, who's on the opposing side of this army. Lest we forget that we are still on the battlefield, right? In the middle of two armies, having a conversation, which apparently only took like 39 minutes. But he presents this same choice to Karna. Just listen. Forget about everything else. Just come over to my side. Krishna speaks to Karna several times, and each time Karna says, I've got obligations. I've got duties to my friend. This is my dharma. And Krishna tries to remind I'm the supreme dharma, right? Like I make I make the rules. Like I know, but I've gotta follow my dharma. In the end, it doesn't actually make him happy.
Mm.
And so sometimes this following of dharma, all of the obligations that we have to do in life, is it gonna make us happy? Because amazingly enough, Krishna doesn't say that you should never factor that in your life. At a certain point, Krishna says you should look for actually the ultimate happiness. Striving after all of these things won't make you happy either, but this relationship with me, it will make us the happiest.
Mm.
Everything else is going to come and go.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a perfect place for us to cap it for today and leave on that note. And very beautifully said. Thank you. Um, we don't have Kimberly with us today. At least I don't see her. She's here, speak
She's
up, but
right
I don't think.
there. She's right. She's right in
Oh,
front of
there
me.
she is. She's here. She made it. Kimberly.
I'm here.
She's here. She sneaked in. What kind of takeaways you got for us,
If you
Kimberly?
join a Zoom call and no one sees you, are you really present?
I am. Thanks, Diana Chita. Today we're
Don't thank
taking
me. I forgot
away.
you were even here.
Yeah, we're taking away that the material world is like a hospital, and it's not wrong to want validation. But instead of identifying with the validation or the disease, we can start identifying with our wholeness. And when we take the medicine of reminders and continual practice, it helps us remember who we really are. And Krishna just wants us to look for the ultimate happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing words from your side, Achyuta?
I have often thought of the holy name and japa as medicine. Like I remember saying to myself once, I was like, if I really believed that I was sick and I had some sort of chronic terminal thing that I was dealing with, and the doctor came and said, look, you have to take this every day or your condition is going to get way, way worse, I would be so serious about taking that medicine every day. And I have taken to thinking about that in the same way as my japa. I've been given this amazing medicine, and if I don't take it, my mind does horrible things. It deteriorates into such a condition, and it starts to turn against me. It's like autoimmune mind disease, and I have to take the medicine. I can't think that I'm too well to take it.
What's the song? Energia Shodi Maya.
Nashi
Lao tu. What's it?
Harina Maha-mantra
Sancha.
Lao
Lao tu
Tumima.
magi.
I really love that song. And Mahaprabhu was like, other than me, who is your friend? I've brought you the medicine of the holy
The
name. All I'm
medicine.
asking is that you take it.
Yeah. We're like, nah.
Right? It's like, I got
Unless
some
there's unless there's applesauce in there, that's not getting past my lips.
The name
Jeev
of that song
Jago.
was Jeev Jago.
Jiva Jago by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Such a good one.
Jeev Jago means wake up, you sleeping souls. Forgot who you are. Take this medicine of the Maha-mantra. I was thinking about that, but I'm gonna walk away with that same thing. I really appreciated that sense of taking the medicine very seriously, because it's so I was listening to somebody give a class a while ago, and he said that one of the greatest tricks of the material world, greatest weapons against our spiritual life, it's not, the demons of the heart and the pride and the greed and all that stuff. It's complacency. It's complacency and procrastination. Feeling that there's not an urgency. There's a feeling like it doesn't matter today or it doesn't matter tomorrow, and then this sense of just putting it off, or not taking it seriously today. And it's really easy to get in that space. And so I'm taking that importance home with me today. So thank you so much for that. Today's Friday, so we've capped off our week. We don't have episodes over the weekend. I'm going to India on Saturday for 2 weeks, going to GEV. And Kishore's not here there on Monday. So we have to see. I don't even know what time it is in India right now. Why is that so funny?
Because at any moment, there's not really any. And this is what I love about devotees. There doesn't have to be any prior notice. Like, if anybody else in the world were thinking about going to India, it would take like several weeks of prep, and trying to get your mind right. And devotees are just like, I think I'm gonna do. I think I gotta be in India. I gotta be
Yeah.
on the other side of the world next
I
week.
haven't. I
I'll
have
be
not
back
packed.
in a
I have not
couple
packed yet, and I've got a very busy day today. Yeah, I'm just gonna gotta squeeze it, and I somehow got to go to Jersey and back to drop my dog off at my father-in-law's place, and I got to get a haircut
Wait, when do you leave?
tomorrow.
You see?
I'm really glad you appreciate this.
I love it so much. It is such a we are a different breed of people, and I love it. Like anybody else who's like planning a trip across the world, they're like, I gotta really figure this out. We're like, I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't know, my day is really full though, so we'll see how it goes. I love it.
Because I gotta go. I got things to do. So,
I
anyways,
love it.
I'm going to India, leaving on Saturday, and we'll have to see, because Kishore's not normally here on Mondays, and Monday maybe. So we'll see.
Just let me know.
But I'm going. I'll be gone. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And so yeah, and I'm teaching a course, like a 2-week course, and we'll see. All right, I love you guys. Wish me well. I will. Did I ever? Anyways, I got airport stories of me. Kishore's going to India, yes, Martha, but he's leaving later than me. He's leaving next week, next Thursday, also.
That was planned months in advance.
Month in advance, yeah. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for being here. We've still been recording. We're gonna end it here. We love you guys. Be well, take care, and see you when we see you.